of the national standard in Mexico, progress and challenges, and the national experience and the progress in the implementation of international accounting standards of the public sector in Peru, challenges and benefits of the direct method. For me, it's a great pleasure to introduce the head of the National Department of Public Accounting of the Secretariat of the Public Economy, and there will be Mr. Zerpa Díaz. He will be the moderator of this session. Good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to the speakers. And first of all, I want to convey greetings from my country, especially from the National Public Accounting Team, because we are being present and officially adding the effort to this selected group. I thank the member states of VIII for the great reception and welcoming. For me, it's a great privilege to be the moderator of these two sessions of our agenda. These sessions will be full of emotions and knowledge for two reasons, because with that we conclude this extraordinary event. This event has allowed us to extend the cooperation among us and be the framework of experience exchange. Meeting once again after 2 years of the pandemic. And the second reason is because the presentations that we'll be listening to will be given by the Mexican and Peruvian representatives. Mexico is the current host, and he was the chairman of VIII in the period from 2021 and 22. Juan Torres and all your team, once again, I want to really congratulate you and thank you for all your support. Please, I ask all the public to give a round of applause to all the team. Thank you. Peru. Peru will be the next focal host, and it will be the host of the period that will be beginning right now and will end on 2023. Oscar, I wish you a lot of success in this endeavor. Oscar faces a great challenge. In this morning, in the administrative morning meeting, we asked him to organize the next focal meeting in Machu Picchu. Oscar, please count on us and all the support of all the state members. And now I will introduce formally the speakers. Juan Torres García, Chairman of VIII, and currently a federal public servant in the Secretariat of Treasury and Public Credit. He is the head of the unit of government accounting, and he's the technical secretary of the Accounting Harmonization Committee, CONAP. In the federal government, he was the general director of Resources and Bonds Department, and he was the president of the Surveillance Commission of Social Service and Surveillance for the workers of the state. In the government of Mexico City, he was under deputy of the Budget and Finance Department in Mexico City. He was an advisor to the Secretariat of Finance and also a secretary in Rural Secretariat. He was the head of the budgetary planning of the Social Security Institute. He was the director of control of funds of the Secretariat of Finance of Mexico City. And he has a bachelor's degree on public accounting, and he has a master's of economy in the College of Mexico. Juan will talk about Mexican experience in the harmonization of accounting standards, challenges and benefits. And then we will have Oscar Núñez. Oscar has more than 20 years of experience in accounting processes, audit, and consultancy. He has been the leader of continuous improvement of processes, internal control, and implementation of IT tools in the public and private sectors. He has been the senior manager, as for example in VIII. He has been a senior manager and an international consultant in the World Bank. And nowadays he is the general director of public accounting in the Secretariat of Economy and Finance in Peru. And he is the chairman of the Accounting Standards Committee. He has an MBA in general direction from the European Postgraduate Institute in Spain, a Master of Finance from Centrun. He's a public accountant from the San Martin de Porres University, and he has an international certification of financial information management and accounting standards management of public sector. And he has a diploma of public management in Peru University. He will talk about the implementation of international accounting standards in the public sectors, challenges and benefits of direct method, and the improvement of accounting processes in our countries is continuous, is constantly evolving. It never stops. And so having solid standards and updated frameworks will allow us to build accounting capacities, budgeting, planning, better skills, and will allow us to forecast the financial project in a better way and will contribute to be more transparent and efficient in the region. The experiences of Mexico and Peru will be, without any doubt, a very interesting debate. So, without further ado, we invite and we give the floor to our colleague Juan Torres García. Well, this is the final part. Thank you very much for continuing here and being with us. I will try to be brief in order to then go to the closing remarks. I will be talking about the standards of accounting that Mexico has and the challenges that we face for geographical distribution, and also the benefits. And I will want to share with you some data that can give us a certain idea on how we are geographically distributed in the subnational governments. We have 32 states in our country and 2,469 municipalities and the federation. These are the three levels of governments present in Mexico. And in the case of municipal governments, we have, for example, a government with 81 persons, and other that has 1,929 people. So if you permeate the transparency in accounting, represents a challenge. Structures are diverse, and there are some stronger in the federal state and some others in the state governments. But the profiles of accountants can be very different, far away from accounting. It is not necessary to have an accountant leading the accounting processes of a municipality. So we always say that the standard needs to be as simple as possible to be implemented. We need to provide from the center the IT tools that can allow us to advance accordingly to the information we generate. I want to also tell you that the greatest standard framework is an accounting governmental framework. Since 2008 has changed the model to try to regulate the structure of the financial information and have standardized catalogs for all three levels of government. And also it has been a support in the federal states. And the states are our second arms that extend the changes of the standards. That also imply a challenge. Here we have two subnational government representatives that we invited to share the knowledge of these forums. Thank you, Veracruz and Cahuila, for being here. And so the challenge is big. We need to go on. And the idea is to be motivated to go more, to go deeper and deeper towards the solution, internal solution in our country. The structure that regulates our country is the National Harmonizing Accounting Council, integrated by the three levels of government, and to reach a consensus, the three levels are autonomous, so we need to reach agreements. And what are we going to permeate in the standards in order to spread information? This is an important challenge. Since its beginning, the Council has created a structure, and in the law of governmental accounting, we foresee not only the direct adoption of international standards, but translating the best practices to incorporate them into our accounting and national system. So the challenge is to go on of the new standards issued and see how we adjust our frameworks. That is the challenge. And right now we are trying to spread more information, adapt them, but we have to see the structure, infrastructure in the subnational governments in order for them not to see it very difficult, because we have also the control processes, and if the public servants are not trained, well, they will be in difficulties. Here I'm just showing the structure, the general structure in the municipality. It's a very wide structure. If we talk of a small municipality, maybe some of the functions can fall into one person. It is more complex to work and generate information, publishing it in internet. Although it is simple, we have to see the formats, how to share the information, the updating of the public accounts portals of subnational governments, and also the federal states, the federal government provides support to municipalities in order to structure the portals, because certain municipalities face difficulties in uploading information into a portal. So the third level of government faces a lot of challenges, and we still to progress on that. We have a simplified method that is according to the size of municipalities. I sometimes want to see in the international standard the different categories per sizes, and what are the minimum acceptable to spread the information. What happens to the smallest municipalities is that we focus to very budgetary information and we put aside the financial information. And the trend is to group everything to establish the minimum sizes of the municipalities. Nowadays, we have been implementing some practices that we were implementing before the pandemic by updating the national accounting standards. And every 3 months, we are compiling compliance information of 5,900 entities in the country. It is around 90% that collaborate with us, and we have a problem to convince them because we also need to see how we meet, because we are very dispersed in very extended geographical areas where we cannot find internet. They represent big challenges. In Oaxaca, out of the 32 states that we have in our country, have 600 of the 2,200 municipalities, and there are many located in the mountain range. Those are the difficulties, and the states try to give support and train some public officials in that they transport to the Mexico City area. And so this is also implies a challenge. I want to show this average score in the general compliance of accounting. As you see, we have 79.12 of compliance with our national standards. We have components, accounting records, financial records, transparency, and administrative records. In regards to transparency, we have important challenges and benefits. This score is national, and at the level of federal state, we are okay. But at the level of very small municipalities and state governments, we have a lower score because not everybody complies with this. And here it's the state executive power where we reach very high scores in the compliance, but we fall according to the distance of the governments and how far they are from the Mexico City area. This is a slide that depicts the municipalities of 66, 97%, and in the smaller municipalities we comply 57%, and so we achieve less scores, and our challenge in each state government is to strengthen the work. In relation to the challenges, I think we have strengthened our efforts in order to provide an economic accounting system provided through an IT development institute that is Intec, and with them we strengthen the distribution of licenses free of charge or finance from the central government in order for them not to have problem to have access to a very expensive tool that is totally out of scope. So we are doing that, and the training, as we have been saying in this event, is relevant, and so we are going through certificates given to public servants, the strengthening of official networks that can be more trained, and in the first stage is to train them on the national standard, but try to incorporate in the second stage an international standards in order to have guidelines on how to focus all our efforts among us. And I think that the turnover of public servants in the subnational governments, the smallest, is very high. Municipalities have a high turnover every year. So the problem is that we lose experience in a quarter, for example, after partial change of administration, we are affected due to this high turnover, because it is not enough to train, but to try to keep more permanent servants in the three levels of government. And obviously, in open data, we want to have more publications with consultations that can be more accessible and clear, because suddenly we publish PDF lectures or conferences that we cannot read. And so that was the main point in this slide. In infrastructure, we do not have a unique accounting system, but we are promoting this one. And around 30% of the subnational governments know about this system and they manage it correctly. And I think that this will be the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Juan. Interesting. We invite to the podium Oscar Núñez, that he will talk about the progress of NICSP implementation in Peru. Please, I ask the audience to post your questions in the Slido platform.
Well, good afternoon to all of you. We had coordinated our efforts along with Fernando and Juan. We discussed that during this last presentation. There's no questions from your side, but from my side, towards you, our public, I'm going to ask you questions just to make sure that you're paying close attention. Thank you so much. We want to thank the Mexican host, the host country, and all the multilateral agencies that are here, international guests, international agencies. Thank you for always giving us your best. You're always there and you're available. And we thank once again all of us, and we thank God for enabling us to share all the seminar for 3 days. Now we're back. We're back and we're in this venue together. I have the opportunity to get to know you face to face and to share experiences. I think I skipped a few slides there. I'm going to speak about 4 core subjects first. I understand that many of you have learned about the Peruvian example. I think it's important for me to highlight some subjects here. I want to go over along with you. We want to analyze the background information of what we did, the gap analysis, the direct methods, the challenges amidst implementation, the progress and achievements to the present date. So in Peru, we're structured. The General Directive Unit of the Republic depends on the Ministry of Treasury and Finances, which at the same time is correlatable to the Vice Ministry of Treasury, and it's part of the whole system of the government's public administration, who are the agencies of that work in government, federal government, and public investment, treasury, resources, human resources. That's similar in many economies. So this agency is the top authority that leads the efforts to develop the accounting system. This system is constituted. There's a board constituted by the Steering Committee of Accounting that approves and passes the laws that are implemented in the private sector. In my role, I'm the General Director of Public Accounting. I'm also the chairman of the Regulating Board, which has its advantages and advantages. These boards are constituted by other agencies, the accounting agencies, which have been constituted in each local government. There's over 4,000 accountants at a global level, at a national scale, working in this field. So there's initiatives that we create in the General Directive Unit of Accounting. We analyze the exercise of budget. There's instruments that lead us to manage things. This is the report that we create for the Peruvian government. It consolidates the financial reports, the budget reports. This instrument contains information about public debt, treasury, correlatable information about social expenditure, budgeted programs. That document is very robust. By year 2021, we added 2,431 entities, considering all the municipalities and levels of government, including the public-private sectors. For the first time during last year, 2021, we achieved 100% of compliance in all the operational entities. Just under 20 entities were the ones that did not give us their reports, but those are entities that are not fully in operation. According to that report, that robust report, it was drafted by the group that constitute Focal. So we measured the progress of implementation of NICS-SP, and the achievement, or the score, was 82%. The implementation was pretty high, and we were rated right under Colombia. We've progressed a lot in the field of compliance with those norms, and I'll show you the report. The main objective that we have as we speak is the following. The account system of the Republic in general should contain reliable quality information that's useful for the decision-making process, that's sent timely and well prepared, and the product of all of the aforementioned. If we comply with international standards, we have reports submitted by the Ministry of Treasury. It should be a clean report. Everything started back in 2004. In that time frame, we made the NICS-SP use official. Those laws were in effect. It was positive law back then. In 2005, we have a very important moment. Back then, we incorporated the accrued basis in our accounting system for accounting, measurement, and budget. We measured all the transactions in the national system of accounting and public budget. Between 2006, 2013, 2014, 2018, and 2021, what we've done throughout that process is the approval of NICS-SP. We approved them to implement them in our country. Today, we have passed the last version of these norms in Spanish. It's the 2020 version of NICS-SP. In 2018, we approved the version of those norms, the version of 2017 that includes NICS-SP 33. We adopted those norms. That's a very important time in our history. Then we decided which was the method that we would apply for Peru, and we decided it would be the direct method. Here you have a slide with a column of guidelines or norms that we drafted and worked with in the past few years. These are in correlation or in harmony with NICS-SP. The first norm is about fixed assets, assessment methods, or reevaluation methods. There's other norms correlated to financial instruments. You have the data of reference in the column. You see the NICS-SP that was used as a norm of reference there. And we improved analyzing the methodology, concession contracts, binding agreements, the measurement of assets, the wear of assets. The last norm is the accounting norm. And in the body, we have information about the closure of year and accounting policies that are in effect in my country. After what I've mentioned, we have the principles of accounting that are generally accepted for the public sector in Peru. So we went through that analysis or gap analysis, and we're part of many projects, but the main project is correlated with the implementation of NICS-SP. We got some advice from CERC University. We got their support. In a joint venture with these authorities, we went through a diagnostic of gap analysis. In that report, we have the general analysis of gaps. There's hierarchy of law. What's first? In law, what's first, in hierarchy, NICS-SP or which norm? Or the accounting laws and regulations. There's loops in the law. There's over-regulations or regulations there, and you can see it in the body of law, in that corpus of law. In our guidelines, we see the elements of revelations. In revelations in our law, we don't have the segment of revelations, but NICS-SP do. So we identified the gaps when we implemented our accounting law to make it all function. There's elements of reevaluation of value, what happens when there is no principal market liquid assets. We had the implementation of a law that's correlatable to national disasters, but what happened with the assets that are affected by some other issue? Just what we presented and what Heriberto from Brazil presented, there was policies about the litigation amortization, and what they do in Brazil is similar to what we do. In Peru, we have a debate happening about that subject. We want to document what's happening better. We're aligning our efforts to implement NICS-SP norm, and back in that timeline, we didn't have that, but now we do. Now, at a global scale, we know that the countries have to decide on whether to implement the direct method or indirect method. We've had many sessions in which you've talked about that. There's a study that IFAC generated that dates back to 2021. It contains information precisely about what happened with the economies involved by 2020. A high percentage of the countries specified that they were now in the accrued basis segment and they were implementing the norm partially, and 30% were still in this other type, working on developing the other type. We have the forecast and the projections, and 43 countries would use the direct method, and a bit over 70 economies would use the indirect method. Whichever method you select, we correlate the methods to the forecast. By 2030, 120 countries will be using the accrued basis type. But in Peru, mainly, due to the three methods of implementation that exist, we decided to use the indirect method. In 2005, in Peru, we implemented the accrued method. I didn't have to change the other method. And to date, we had the official norms that are in effect. They were not object of amendment or modification for their implementation. The accounting guidelines are aligned to meet the international standards too. I didn't write it there, but that's something for us to consider. We studied the level of demand. We needed to produce norms, regulations, if we selected the indirect method. And I'm talking about we needed more human capital, more human resources, more man hours, more research time invested. And that was considered as part of the segment of cost benefits. We used that method, though. There's many challenges that we faced amidst an implementation. The first challenge happens when we're implementing the model of the accrued completely in its full scope. And what we've seen in our country, it's the budget accrued that was accrued. There's still gaps that we need to improve. Obviously, we need to align all our administration systems. The laws and regulations that guide other entities of the government must work and contribute to implement the law. We're amidst the process right now. It's a major challenge, as I've said. That alignment is a challenge. The stakeholders are working on their mandates, on their initiatives, and they must understand that it's a cross-crop effort, multiple institutional efforts, and it's a change. We need top management to engage themselves. We're achieving that to make sure that we're successful in the process. It hasn't been easy. We repeat this in all our workshops. This not only depends on our accountants or the accountant department. The success of this effort depends on other agencies that work for public government. We want to strengthen the technical skill set of all the accountants in government in all their levels. We work with collegiate bodies and different accountant departments so we can spread knowledge about the norms. We're training the trainers so they can spread the knowledge about the implementation of an XSP with a group of collegiate bodies constituted by professionals. They're multipliers as professionals, and they have to replicate their knowledge in other provinces. It's a challenge for us to adapt CF, to change or improve our system, and adjust it to meet the needs and narrow the gaps. When implementing an XSP, we're improving the processes of accountability. What have we achieved? We've received support from Zurich University, so we drafted the implementation plan. That strategy was escalated to all the top management officials. It was passed, it was approved. That happened at the beginning of 2021. That plan has terms, has conditions, has due dates, responsible parties or subjects, and so on. We had the international accreditation of more than half of our team. Over 100 people have the international accreditation for this work. So we submitted a new legal frame for this in our system. Our law, was not obsolete, but we needed to adjust it and incorporate other elements that facilitate what we do. We need to implement the system totally. That happened this year. There was amendments to the law, to what's enshrined there. We had new laws and regulations, functions, duties, roles for the women and men of those authorities. They're responsible. They must update the information they bear. And we passed that law, as I've said, and that code was sent to other consultants, other subjects involved, and explicitly we specified that the accounting frame had to be prepared by the entities along with the financial reports in compliance with the norms with an XSP. We discussed this with the private sector. We had the collegiate steering committee that creates those norms and regulations, and explicitly in the private sector, we let the private sector know that they need to be in compliance with an XSP. This correlates to what's happening in my country. Our country is heading to be in compliance with the top standards of global level. We constituted work tables. Today, we're, cleaning everything in this initiative. Our progress in the implementation is 90%. We're at that maturity level. And we're going to increase the maturity level in a few months. We're going to eliminate mistakes. We're going to correct the mistakes based on the experience of other countries too. We're going to use the experience of other economies to decide better. Different entities have different demands. They always demand the mistakes should be corrected. Correct the stock. But we don't have the budget for that. But on the other hand, the ministry asked the authorities to receive budget. Budget allocation is limited. So the budget laws of 2020, 2021, the General Budget Act, we're going to have the new law that's going to be passed in 2023. The law is there, so the different entities have to go through the paperwork to receive allocated budget and exercise the budget in compliance with norms NICS-SP. This is not having the impact we expected, but what we've done has been of help. It's been a tool for all the stakeholders or entities to be in compliance and do what they must. Thank you so much. Thank you, Oscar. Well, we thank both of our panel members. Their experience is interesting. We share experiences between Mexico and Peru. Doing this will strengthen us and our endeavors. So they're a reference, to improve government accounting in our countries. We start the Q&A. I want to thank the participants. We'd like to thank you all for formulating your questions. Juan? Could you please give us further detail? Could you tell us about your simplified intermediate system? Does it have a way to measure? Do you have revelations? What does it have? Well, what's factual is that there's 3 schemes. There's the national general scheme. The national scheme is something that all the agencies or stakeholders have to be in conformity with or in compliance with. The other schemes are implemented at municipal levels. There's other measured data. If there's 5,000 in population, we have to think about the use of that system in those orders. With the second scheme, we have 5,000 or 25,000 in population considered with that budget system. And in financial reports, we have a catalog of accounts to facilitate the process of adoption. That's what it's all about. That's the substance. Okay, Oscar, which are the conceptual differences and practical differences between the accrued type, the accrued budget type, and the financial types? In practice, that is configured in our system, in CF, both types. So that gives us the opportunity to work with time. There's laws or guidelines approved by the Ministry of Treasury. We analyze the flow of the approvals, of payment approvals. The term should not surpass 10 days. In practice, that doesn't happen. If there's delays, let's say an entity received a service from a vendor or a commodity, and there's no accounting entry yet until there's a payment, a formal settlement. That makes it difficult for us to keep our accounting entries totally aligned to accrued basis and our financial. And when you speak of provisions, then that's not in the side or in the branch of budget. But we've grown a lot. We've advanced a lot. The laws, as I've mentioned in our presentation, when there's payments due to litigations, we know that there's payments due to guarantees. And we correlate this issue with statistics, actuarial activities, payment of settlements. There's so much to still define from our sides yet. But thank you, Oscar, so much for it. Okay. Oscar, when do you keep a record of the payments? How do you integrate the private companies in that yearly report? The payments there in the report goes to the income chapter. There's the accrued, but there's the financial type, and we're just starting. We're analyzing this with the administrator of the contributions. This authority has the tools to specify if it's the accrued type and if it has to go through other levels of approval to do things. We need the help of stakeholders who are consulting agencies, and we can ask them what's going to happen in midterm. But what about the private sector, the companies send the reports in compliance with NIF. It's not standardized, though, yet. We're trying to standardize in midterm, though. So most of public companies are object of an audit. They have quality, reliable information. If we're under the frame of our law called NIF, and we're aligned with the norms that with NICS SP and with the accounting principles in our country. So we consider that the information that we get should obey and be in conformity with international laws, those standards. And as I've told you, at the time being, we're not standardizing yet. We accept them as they are. In the process of consolidation, we have to analyze the elimination of all the reciprocity in operations. We have a template. We've developed, thanks to the programmers, a system. We prepare our general accounts from the federal government. We integrate the accounts, all the reports, consolidate them, and we eliminate the types of operations that are in their type of, the type is reciprocity of operation. Juan, when do you measure the progress of the norms implementation at a national scale? What's the main thing that we should all consider? As I told you, the type of entity or agency leads us to mark a difference when selecting the scheme. When there's an assessment, there's different schemes, right? The tools that lead us to obtain data are web tools. Obtaining data is facilitated by the implementation of the system. We're using the system with the Ministry of Treasury. We had a third party developing that tool, and we're developing in-house. Now we obtain financial reports, all the financial reports, and they're sent to that centralized system, to the tool. So we consolidate the information at a national scale. We kicked off the first stage of an initiative. It'll take us a week and a half to work this out with different governments at state level. Powers or authorities of the Federation participate. They're using the tool. It has 3 parts of the information dumped in the software. We continue dumping that information in the software. We have a lot of rotation in subnational governments. Our government officials change their roles, and we lose their experience. The tool will strengthen the compilation of that information or reports. At some point, we need to have the storage capacity. We need to use technology to store the data, to strengthen all the archived information in our nation. We archive that, the history of this country, thanks to our public initiatives. Juan, thank you. I'd like to know, the questions for both. Which is the main challenge that your countries are facing, even though you're aligned and going towards the same direction? It seems to me that maybe it's understanding. What's normal is that we face barriers when trying to implement norms or understand the norms. We're convinced about the fact that the norm is something that we have to incorporate in the conceptual frame of things. We're all aligned towards that heading, but when you ask me about revelations, there's many gaps in those types in our laws. So we have loopholes. We want to broaden, adjust, detail the norm conceptually speaking, because there's elements or constructs that we had not incorporated. That obstructs, but we have to eliminate that obstruction those obstructions are eliminated when we translate the norms correctly. We have to translate the norm and transfer it to the accountants in a country and go through the process of adaptation to implement the norms. Accounting as a discipline needs us to be prepared. Accounting is as a discipline that's seen clearly in the government. Our professionals have to be trained. They must know what's accrued basis, and it's complex. That's part of the challenges in the discipline of accounting. So I think that the team that we've constituted has to face this. We're professionals. We've been working in the public government. We have to adapt to new concepts to strengthen the management of the information and improve the management information. We're adopting new tools and technologies. And doing this shows us clearly we don't have full capacity to develop the initiatives internally. We know that in government we depend on budget, on terms, on budget and time. The accounting departments in government are important, and even more so now. Our authorities should know this and visualize that, it permeates. And by knowing the importance, that then the authorities pay close attention to what we do. We have to be ready to raise our hands. We need to use new technologies, blockchain, and the intermediate processes. We know that it's going to be important to have faster operations. It all translates to that. We're in a government that it's austere, and that's part of the challenges that we're facing too, austerity. So thank you, Oscar. Well, I believe that there is a paradigm change in reality because public administration and the decision making of public administration are not solely based on accounting information, financial reports. We base our decisions on reports from Treasury, financial reports, or changing those paradigms. And if we want to build these public policies, the executive branch exists, right, in our government. Then there's regional governments and subnational governments in Peru. So all of those levels of government should be aligned and understand that the information is useful. If we go through a decision-making process, this is the support, because we need to consider that accounting information is the support, but in it, there lies the challenge. It's all fundamental. We need to administrate change, the administration. We need to change and adapt and comply with the law. We've discussed this in many presentations. We debate these issues with IPSAS B. Maybe we need to draft the practical implementation of the norms that simplified for municipal governments that obey to international standards that comply with NextSP. Maybe there's a certain level of progress in the implementation. The norm NextSP is a robust document. All the entities must have the resources so they can achieve what they must achieve. They have ministries, but if we ask the municipal governments to achieve the same, maybe it's not necessary, maybe it's not useful. We have to ponder things, weigh things. There's risks, there's benefits. We must include this in our program in the next edition of Focal. We have to communicate this with IPSAS B and other agencies. We need to think about how to implement these norms in SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, government, and companies as well. So, well, thank you so much. There's so many factors to consider. We have to take on the challenges. We know that one of the challenges is resistance to change. We need to train our government officials. The use of technology is a key factor that will determine the level of success when implementing our initiatives or projects. We thank our panel members. We thank you all for participating. Thank you. Have a great afternoon. Now we're going to listen to the former president of Focal. He's finishing his administration. He's going to give a token of our appreciation to the panel members of Focal. Thank you for being part of this forum.